Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today. I hope you have had a wonderful week. Unfortunately, I had some sad news this week. An acquaintance of mine had passed away very unexpectedly. So it really just kind of reflects on that. We never know how long we're going to be here, how long we're going to be around. And so some people say to me, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until this time, or I'm going to wait till I retire, or I'm going to wait until I'm this, or I'm going to wait. But why wait? There's no guarantee. We might not get to retirement. We might not get to that whatever point that we're waiting for. It may not happen. One great thing that I can say about her is she did what we say here is to live your best life. And she was living her best life. One of the goals that she had was to go to 40 concerts and festivals before her 40th birthday. And she absolutely did that, which is a great thing because unfortunately she didn't make it to her 40th birthday. So just a reminder for everybody, don't wait. Tomorrow's no guarantee. Tell your family, tell your friends how much you love them. Yeah. But moving on to a lighter note, today on the show we have Simon Cooper. Now, Simon is originally from the United Kingdom and has moved to Paraguay. And it wasn't just a recent transition for him. This happened, I believe it was about 20 years ago. So he knows the area very well. He knows a lot of things about it. He has seen, obviously, many changes over the years. So I will have him explain his journey, how he got there, the changes he's seen, and what has happened for him. So without further ado, let's get on with it and talk with Simon. Welcome to the show today, everyone. I'm glad you could make it. And today we have Simon Cooper on the show. And Simon is going to tell us all about his experience from moving from the United Kingdom all the way to Paraguay. So welcome and thank you very much for joining us, Simon.
Thank you, Sally. Yeah, pleased to be here. And I hope I can say some interesting words along the way.
I'm sure you have lots of interesting stories. So let's kind of go back to the very beginning, shall we say?
Yeah.
And what made you move to Paraguay or even consider it? Because a lot of people, when I mention Paraguay, they always think like, what? Where is that and why? It's not one of those kind of really popular places that people say, oh, I want to move here.
Yeah, well, very much with it being one of those, where is that sort of places? That was the appeal and back. Mm-hmm. I've been out here for 20 years. And when I first came, there was no guidebook. I mean, how good was that? I knew, well, everything I find was going to be new. But basically, the essence of it is, I'm from the UK. I left school, went into working in a bank, just a normal high street bank. That was great for years, but towards the turn of the century, it became more of a shop. And I'm more the mathematical, scientific brain. I'm not a salesman, so I was pretty desperate to get out. So nothing I liked in the UK. I was going to just go traveling around the world, but in the back of my mind, I had this thought: if you do that, you'll just see places, but you won't really discover anything. So I flicked through magazines. And this little half a dozen line advert, some woman was setting up a teaching project, teaching English to children out in the Paraguayan countryside. And I thought that and thought, oh, now that's a bit different. And it says no experience needed. Double good.
Wow.
So I had a couple of phone chats with her. And I thought, yep, this is for me. I'll pack in my job. I'll give that a go and see what happens. So I didn't actually meet anybody, any of the other volunteers or anyone that was running it before I flew to Paraguay. So I was flying out to Paraguay and I thought, hope it's for real. I hope it's not just some mad person sending people to South America for a laugh. So it was quite pleasing to get to the airport and have somebody waiting there for me, which was nice. And then spent 2 years teaching English to children out here in the little town of Piribebuy in the Paraguayan countryside. That sort of eventually wound to end, as these things always do. So back to the UK, still nothing there I really fancied. I had a look at South Africa, but lovely country, but I didn't like the lifestyle, the living behind this business that was all over there. So thought, go back to Paraguay, give it a try. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't work out, well, it doesn't work out. So came back out here, and well, it seems to have worked out. I found a bit of land, had a house built on it, and been happily living here ever since. So it's not a bad life.
That's an incredible story, because I mean, 20 years ago, we even have to think of like, yeah, there was the internet 20 years ago, but it wasn't nothing like it is now. Like, I think then it was kind of just more beginning phases. There were no smartphones, you know, there was, you know, there was nothing like that. So that really was a big risk, a big chance that you were taking to just answer an ad in a magazine and then book a flight to Paraguay. And there's probably part of your mind thinking, oh my gosh, I hope this is legit. I hope this is okay. Like, what am I going to do if it's not?
Was a bit of that. Plan B was, I just go traveling around South America and just feel like a fool for a month or two. But yeah, I was pretty confident. You know, my gut feeling said, yeah, this will be good. This will work out.
Right.
And it did. Yeah, I should mention about the internet. When I first came here, there wasn't even a phone. I couldn't even make phone calls.
Wow.
And to use the internet, I had to catch a bus into town, which is only one bus a day, and then go to the internet cafe and hope that their computers are working. Some weeks they were, some weeks they weren't. And I could either do some emails, or I could stand around like a WhatsApp for 3 hours, wait for the bus home again, and try again next week.
Wow, I mean, when you explain it that way, it makes it seem like it was 50 or 80 years ago, but it wasn't. It was 20 years ago. So
20 years ago. But no, it was like stepping back, more than 50 years. It really was stepping back into the past. I mean, people were still washing their washing by hand in the stream, just banging washing against rocks. That was the way that things were done. And electricity was on some days, water was on occasionally. It wasn't like England.
No, not like England. And so what did your family and friends say when you said, I'm moving to Paraguay and I'm going to teach English in the countryside to kids?
Well, my family were very supportive. They've always said, you do what you want. If you're happy doing it and it works out fine, we'll support you. And they did come out a few years later. Parents came out and they saw this place was for real, and I really did have a house, which is good. But as for my friends, I would say they split into three groups. There were those that were jealous and wish I'd done that. There were those that were interested, and there were about a third of them who just thought I was completely mad and stopped being my friends. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It whittles the people down to the ones worth communicating with.
That's right. Wow, I mean, so interesting. So you've obviously seen a lot of changes in the last 20 years of being there. So what, I guess, I mean, I want to say what were some of the biggest obstacles you overcame from moving there? I mean, obviously part of it, as you said, was like going back in time many years. So it's adjusting to the inconsistency of water, of power, the internet, those types of things. What about were there cultural obstacles for you to overcome as well?
There were cultural differences, but I'm pretty flexible, so I adjusted the way I am. I am and always have been eager to learn and discover how things happen. So the cultural differences, they were differences rather than problems. I just went along with them and found out a lot more about the country by being open and inquisitive.
Of course.
So on that side, there was no problem at all. It was for me to learn, and it only benefited.
Right. And I think that's true, that whenever we relocate to another country or even just visit, we have to be open and know that there are cultural differences. And to me, not one is right or wrong. So coming from Canada, we do things a certain way just because it's been done that way forever. There's really no reason why. And other cultures have things that they do because they've been doing it forever. And neither one is right or wrong. It just is the way it is. But when we're open to that, it's really interesting how much we can learn and appreciate different things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look back now and I think, I go back to England to visit and think, oh, that's a strange way of doing this or strange way of doing that. But being open, it's very much, it's the way into a culture, taking an interest, adjusting to the way things are done different. And then you discover the culture, the way of thinking of the people, because it's all interconnected.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so before you moved there, did you speak any Spanish? Were you practicing? Or it seems like and correct me if I'm wrong, that you kind of weren't happy in the UK. And when you found this ad, like that time went quite quickly. So it wasn't really a long process, or was it from the time you decided
no, it was a few months from finding the ad to packing in the job and being out here. Now, I arrived here with not one word of Spanish.
Okay.
Not even a hello or goodbye. Nothing at all. So for a while, I was picking up bits and pieces, and even now, my Spanish I've never had a Spanish lesson, so it's picked up the locals. So I've got the country dialects. So if I go into Assumption, the capital, it often takes people a moment or two to work out what I'm saying, because I've got a country dialect, I've got a country accent, so I don't really speak Spanish properly. I speak it like the people I spend my days with, which is I think it's better than classroom Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that happens in a lot of countries. I was in Italy. I go often. Italy is one of my favorite countries, but I was there. I think in this instance, it was before the pandemic. So we'll say about 3 years ago. And I was having lunch or dinner or something, and I was talking to the waiter, and then one of the other tables started to talk. And he talked to them for a second and then turned back. And I was like, oh, what did they say? Because they were trying to talk to me earlier, but I didn't speak Italian. Yeah. And he said, I don't know. I'm like, but what do you mean you don't know? Like you're Italian, you speak Italian, they're speaking Italian. What do you mean you don't know? Yeah. And he said, oh no, they're from a different region. The dialect is completely different. I'm not sure exactly what they're saying.
That's it. Yeah, that's the sort of Spanish I've got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, local to this local bit of countryside.
Right. So that definitely can happen in many places.
Oh yes.
But it's adjusting, and I mean you learn for the region that you're in, and that's great. So what was for then, and I'm the process has probably changed over time, but for you, what was the process like for you to get residency there?
The process here in Paraguay, it's very much collecting the right bits of paper. There is talk of it maybe next year becoming a little bit more complicated, but the basic gist of it is there are various papers you need from the UK, from your home country, and then papers you need to get out in Paraguay, the right one translated, all the stamps on. But it's a fairly straightforward process if everything is lined up. Most people have an immigration lawyer to do it because that just saves going round and round in circles. I personally, I had one. He was so slow and so didgery. I gave up and I did it myself because I had time. I had time to waste. Okay. So I went around all the government offices, around the Supreme Court, and all the officials, they were welcoming. They didn't care my Spanish was rubbish. They were just intrigued that I was trying to do it myself.
And that's what I was going to say. They were probably just like, he's willing to do it himself. Let's be even nicer. Right. Let's be very helpful because this guy's trying to do it himself.
Yeah. In a couple of the offices, in the immigration ministry, they felt so sorry for me. They took me around the back and actually took me into the office and sat me with somebody inside rather than out at the counter. But yeah, so I got it all done myself, and it's really not that complicated. And then once it's all in the process, 90 days later, you get a residency card, and that's valid for 10 years, and then just also, well, pretty simple to then renew after that.
Right. Yeah, and I find with residency, because I have a couple residencies, and it's having patience. And a lot of it is, obviously there's some different rules within different countries, but for the most part, it is having your documents, having your stamps, having the right ones translated, and going from many offices and then back to those offices and then back again in the right order, which don't make sense, but eventually it gets done.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I went for. I went round and round in circles. I visited this office and that office 2 or 3 times round and round. But back then, I had time to waste. I had time free. But the majority of people do have an immigration lawyer to do all the running about for them, and that saves all that stress, because they can then get on with finding somewhere to live. Because unfortunately, I had somewhere to live before I started that, so I wasn't doing the 2 things at once.
Right. And I'm sure probably immigration wasn't as busy 20 years ago as it is now. I'm making the general assumption for almost every country. I mean, now, especially since the pandemic, because people can work quote remotely or from home. And that doesn't necessarily have to be in the city that they're currently in. And so we are seeing a lot more movement, whether it is from inside cities to outsides or different cities within the same country, but there's a lot more movement of people moving from one country to another country. So I'm sure it's a lot busier now than it was 20 years ago as well.
Here, I've got the impression that immigration goes in peaks. When something happens in a certain place that has contacts with Paraguay, there's a peak and then it goes back in a trough. At the moment, there's a huge peak, which I think is the background to them thinking about making it more complicated. There have been a lot of people coming out of Central Europe, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, the past couple of years, who have been fed up with Europe, and they're just wanting to go somewhere to escape and hide. Really, that's really why they've come here. And Paraguay's got a lot of open space, so there has been a huge spike in Central European immigration, but in 2 or 3 years it will calm down again.
Right. It's almost like it's like everything in the world where there's, I don't like to call them bubbles, but there's the peaks and valleys where everything gets up and it goes busy and it gets crazy, and then things kind of calm back down again, and then it goes up and gets busy and crazy. And obviously, most recently with the pandemic, people are thinking, well, if I can work from home or I can work from anywhere, where do I want to be, where I'm maybe not in the city, maybe not in this country, where I can have a better lifestyle that's more affordable.
Absolutely.
And then obviously now with the Ukraine and Russia, there's a lot of people that are like, whoa, we're in Europe, we're pretty close to this, hopefully it doesn't expand further. But and just dealing with that, you know, that's another reason why a lot of people again are moving as well. So we're kind of at a peak on that. Would have been like the pandemic itself was kind of one peak, and I think with Russia Ukraine would have kind of been a separate peak if they were further apart, but now we're kind of a peak on top of a peak.
That's it. Yeah. So that's pushing people to find somewhere like Paraguay where they've got that space, they can do their work as and when they want it, and without being all the regulations that come in Europe. A lot of people have come away wanting to get away from all that regulation.
Right.
Be that right or wrong, that's been a driving force.
Yeah, and everybody's, as we say here, you know, we like to help people to live their best life, and everybody's best life is different, right? Some people dream of going to Canada and they look at me like, you're Canadian, you left, you're crazy. And I'm like, I always say, have you ever been there during winter? Not so crazy. But yeah, so everybody's ideal and perfect is different, and it all depends on where we come from. So I can see how certain people from some countries think Canada's great, the United States is great, European countries are great, because in comparison, they have different opportunities or just a different lifestyle. And then people from those countries are obviously looking at other countries because, again, it's a different lifestyle. They're like, oh yeah, I've lived here through this for so long. Oh, I prefer this better. I think this way of living is better. And it's just different for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And from someone from the outside is always going to see a country different to someone that's been there all along. Because I mean, I get asked. I have Paraguayan friends, and it's not unusual to be asked, "Why did you choose Paraguay? What is there in this country?" But there is an awful lot. And so, I mean, I've got here, green space, open air, nobody overlooking me. It's fantastic.
Right. Yeah. And there's that saying too, that people always think the grass is always greener on the other side, which isn't true. It depends on how well that grass is watered, which means how well is your own grass watered. So I guess another kind of big concern that our listeners would be curious about is the healthcare in Paraguay. Now I know you're in the countryside, so obviously you're further away. If heaven forbid you ever like break a leg or cut your finger or something like that. So that's a bit different. And then more of the advanced healthcare for if something big happened or you needed regular care from a doctor.
Yeah. The national public healthcare system here isn't great. It actually, during the pandemic, they built a lot of extra add-on buildings, hospitals, expecting an influx of people, which never happened. So all the hospitals have expanded, and they've all got these new shiny bits, which is only going to be good moving forwards. But for the time being, they are understaffed. They've got old-fashioned equipment. So any expat like me would want to use a private facility. Every town out here has a private clinic. I use that, and that's pay as you go. But in Assumption, there are a few good quality private healthcare centres which take members, so you can pay your insurance with them, although you are then tied to one particular institution. But yeah, it's a case of finding them and making sure that they offer what you need, because they're not always quite what they say they are.
Right.
And there's an issue here out in the countryside with doctors not being as qualified as they make out to be, or renewing prescriptions via WhatsApp messages and all that nonsense like that. Oh yes, that goes on.
Wow. Okay.
So that's another reason the public system is best avoided, because not that efficient. But private healthcare is few and far between. But what there is, there is good care available. Transport into a hospital, if you say you break your leg or something, you would have to make your own way there. There's not a fleet of ambulances. You can't call up hospital to come and get you. I mean, I've known people here, locals, that have broken an arm or something, and they've had to go into town on the bus, on a bumpy bus, down a dirt track, which can't do a broken arm much good at all. So that has to be thought of.
So some things to think about. So note on that: don't break a leg. Literally, don't.
No, I don't want to break a leg. That would be inconvenient.
Very, very inconvenient. That, I mean, and that's a good thing to know. I mean, for some people who are younger, active, healthy, you know, for some, that's not going to really be a concern. I mean, obviously a broken bone, it hurts and it's painful and things like that, but it would be something for people to consider if they do have ongoing health problems or something like that they would need to be into the capital or fairly close.
So, within touching distance of the capital, because and somewhere where they could get themselves into the clinic as and when, because they won't be able to phone up the clinic to come and get them. But definitely with ongoing concerns, you would want to know where the health centre was, and quite possibly find one which you can sign up subscriptions with to use as and when, rather than having to pay the whole fee as and when you use it, which could be expensive.
Right. So what is, I try to say one thing, but sometimes it's really hard to just pick one, but what would be, I guess, maybe one or two things that you like most about living in Paraguay?
I suppose the freedom to be who I am. There's the lack of rules and regulations. As an expat, or even the locals live outside much rules and control. It's much freer, much open, it's much open to do what you want to society. Here it's nice. Children run out in the street and they're playing outside. They're not locked indoors. None of that nonsense. The small ones still walk to school. And here where I am, I'm not that far from Assumption. I'm 90 kilometers away. Okay. But I'm up in the hills, which is as much as hills as Paraguay gets, really. But it means that I overlook palm tree covered cliffs, just horizon, and behind me there's not a single house. So at night, star-filled skies, peace and quiet, open space. Yes,
sounds beautiful.
And very fresh air, no pollution out here.
And how's the water there? Just something that kind of popped to my head, because even most recently I was living in Barcelona and love Barcelona. But the water there, even to drink, tastes funny. It like dries out my skin, my hair. It's just not, and for a major city, before I moved there, I really thought I was under I thought all major cities would have good water. I mean, coming from Canada, the tap water there, I appreciate it so much that it just tastes good. It's clean. It's nice. And I unfortunately most times end up buying bottled water, and I hate it because of all the plastic in Barcelona. So how do you find the water there?
Water here is fine. Underneath Paraguay, there's a huge aquifer. So it's water it's prehistoric water. It's sealed with a clay tap on the top. So it's been there for thousands and thousands of years. It's pure. It's filtered down through the rocks. So all the water comes up from wells and is then piped down pipes. In the cities, it can be a bit questionable at times, purely because of the number of people that are drawing on the wells and the pipes going through the state. the dirt it picks up is from the inside of old pipes more than anything else. But here out in the countryside, my water, it comes from a well 3 or 4 kilometres away, comes down a pipeline. And just on the subject of water, they started building 2 or 3 months ago a large construction. It looked like a factory. So I asked around and said, "What's that?" He said, "Oh, that's a water factory. Apparently, they're going to tap into the water and bottle it and sell it as mineral water, and that's exactly the same water that comes out of my taps. So it's pretty good water."
It's great that it's good water. It's not good that they're building the facility. On a bit of a side note that I don't want to get tracked onto is I truly believe that water is going to be the new oil. And there's major shortages of water in so many places around the world. So now that like they're going to build and bottle and sell the water, that's just such a bad idea, because then local people are not going to have as much access to the water because these companies want it for profit.
Yeah, I mean, it's further down the pipeline, and they're not going into. They're going straight. They're going to put a well and go straight into the aquifer. But it's the profit from that isn't going to go to local people. It'll be somebody in assumption will get a profit of that. But on a side note of that, it is known. I mean, the people have got this thought in their head. They've had for years that we've got a lot of water, and there's this fear that Americans are going to fly down with tanker planes and
take all your water.
And take all the water. That's a rumor that's been going around for 10, 15 years. So it is a thought. It's not something that's not thought about.
And I think it's just mostly too because we're hearing about it. It just seems so much this year that it just seems that so many countries, and I know it's not just overnight, but it's all of a sudden the media is really talking about it, and we're hearing about it a lot more, is how low the water levels are in so many countries. And they talk about it like it's happened overnight, but we've been seeing this go on for a long period of time. And having water is going to be an issue in some places. I mean, it's already becoming an issue.
Yeah, here, fortunately, because it's not reservoir water or rainwater, it's water that's sealed underneath clay. It's been there for thousands of years. The water levels in the wells do go down, but during hot, dry spells in the summer, then there's strain on the motors, and the water will go off for a couple of days because they're trying to not burn out the motors on that. But once the rains come, which they do, it tops you back up again. So that's not so much an issue here, because it's a different sort of water. It's not surface water.
So that's an extra bonus of Paraguay is having that water, which is great. And so if somebody was kind of on the fence about moving abroad to Paraguay or somewhere else, and they just really weren't sure about it, what would be one piece of advice that you would give them?
My piece of advice would be to be like me. If it feels right, then it probably is. Because if I've always considered that, look at any country, if it's a place where people choose to live, be they locals, be they expats, then it can't be that bad a place. There are places where people have to live and they'd really not be there. They'd really rather be somewhere else. But around here, people choose to be here. So that's always a good sign. And if it feels right, then at least go out and have a visit and see whether it is for you.
Right. That's a great piece of advice. Well, thank you very much, Simon, for your time. Really appreciate it, and loved hearing about your story and your journey to Paraguay, because it's not, as I said before, it's not a place that a lot of people have on their radar. So
that's a nice thing about it, and long may it stay that way.
Yes.
And great to talk to you. And yeah, I hope I said a few interesting words along the line.
Yes, absolutely. No, you definitely did. We really, really appreciate it. And again, thank you
No,
very
no problem at
much.
all. That's great.